Victor, the midterms, Florida was the big attention, I think, and it looks like Oliver Larkin lost out to Jared Moskowitz, who for representative, a Democratic representative candidate, and Oliver Larkin was the DSA, so the DSA did not do well in that case. And then the second thing is the Senate race. Angie Dickinson against it will face off with Ashley Moody, and Angie Dickinson was the DSA candidate. And I was wondering, you had thoughts?
Well, he was running against Oliver Larkin, who was Jewish, like Moskowitz, but he had a whole record of endorsing at various times the entire agenda of the Democratic Socialists of America. So when they were asking him about defund the police and Pentagon, he would say yes. So it was way too liberal left for even the Democrats in Florida. And on those districts had there's about 700,000 Jewish American voters in Florida, and they tend to be people who have left New York and the East Coast, whether just for the weather or for political conditions or for tax reasons. And they're very, I can tell you, as someone who's spoken to a number of Jewish groups in Palm Beach, they're very politically aware. And they were not going to support somebody who had trashed Israel, as Larkin had done. And so I think that was a given that he was going to lose. And the same thing, Nixon was running against Vindman. And Vindman was notorious for being the quasi whistleblower. When he was on the National Security Council, he claimed that he heard Donald Trump issuing ultimata to Zelensky. Now, the problem with that is in the years since that, and that led to the first impeachment, we have now got the whole story. And even the electorate knows a lot about it. Number one, Vindman violated protocol by disclosing a classified phone call to someone who was not on the call. He wouldn't answer questions about whom he talked to, but he did lie and say that he had not met with Adam Schiff. He did call Eric Caramella up, who was not on the call, who volunteered to be the official conduit or whistleblower. So when the hearings came out, we weren't really sure of that. He just said, no, I can't speak about that. But in the time since then, we've got the whole story that he called his friend Eric up and said, look, I just listened to Trump and I can interpret that he was leveraging weapons for political harassment of the Bidens. Because Trump said something to you should look at the Bidens, I'm giving you aid, but you're interfering in U.S. politics. That's what he claimed. And a lot of people since then have seen that Vindman is culpable and that he did violate the law and that he did lie and that Adam Schiff cooked up the entire impeachment writ, and Adam Schiff lied about it, said that he had not met with Vindman. Then the other thing that came out with Vindman was he was a Ukrainian dual citizen, and he had been bragging that he had been offered the defense minister slot in Ukraine while he was involved so heavily in the United States government. So it doesn't look good when you're on the National Security Council of the United States and under testimony you brag that the Ukrainians wanted you to be their defense minister as a dual citizen. And then you add to that the Ukrainian minister, ambassador, in 2016 had written an op-ed that was really a taboo and interfered in U.S. politics, aside from the Steele dossier, basically endorsing Hillary Clinton. Add all of that up, and he didn't age very well. And then he got involved as a middleman. So he was constantly lobbying for the Ukraine war, which is fine, but he wanted more and more weapons. And then we found out that he had some kind of what he called a nonprofit or some kind of private company, but it wasn't nonprofit. and he was refurbishing or transferring vehicles into Ukraine. So you can't be an advocate, a U.S. citizen advocating for your former homeland and then be involved with your former homeland in various mechanisms, whether supplying them weapons with your in a private capacity or launching impeachment against the president of the United States. So he came off, what I'm trying to say is arrogant and shady and duplicitous.
Just a quick question. Everything you say right now seems to me that he would be a shoo-in for the Democrats. Why did he lose out to this, to Nixon?
Well, he came across as a the he wasn't in a congressional district. That's what you got to remember. He was statewide. And usually that hurts the socialist because they get all of, but in this particular case, he didn't have a constituency like Moskowitz did. He didn't have a moderate and wealthy base to work within and a large Jewish vote within that congressional district. And he didn't have what Debbie Wasserman Schultz had. She had been redistricted also out of her job, and she went into the 20th district. There were 5 African Americans there. Elijah Manley, I'm sure I've been chastised by a couple of readers for getting the names wrong. But in his case, he was leading, and he made a statement that she had no business coming out of her district that no longer existed to prey on what he said were black candidates. So then he got the idea that the leader would consolidate the black vote and they would have more than Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who outspent everybody because she had a lot of very wealthy donors and she had a monopoly on the Jewish vote within the 20th district, like Moskowitz did. And lo and behold, she won handily. But when you sum up all of the black candidates, had they united and had they voted along racial lines, which they seem to have done, then she would have lost. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of dissension in that this was a microcosm of what's going on. You have Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was a hard left, big DEI person, and then she loses her district in the redistricting wars between the states, and she jumps into it wasn't a majority black district, but I think it was 48 or something plurality, and she jumps in there in a district that wasn't her own, but she was the one that was telling us that we need to racially gerrymander and point. Then she takes a seat away that would have won by a black candidate, and then we have um, these Nixon is a crazy socialist. That vote, she was outspent by Vindman, but I think that vote was unique statewide among the Democrats because people did not like Vindman. He comes across as arrogant. I mentioned the history that he had, and he's not a likable person. There was a personal animosity to him. Everybody who meets that guy is turned off.
Well, can I ask you what I saw Ashley Moody. So this is a senatorial race that Nixon is running for. Angie Nixon, and then she's against Ashley Moody. And I have to confess that Ashley Moody didn't seem terribly impressive. So for the Republicans. So how do you think that race is going to come out?
She's
Do you
going to
think it's
win.
something to watch, or will
Yeah,
it be
she's gonna win.
far and away?
She's the incumbent. She took over Marco Rubio's seat. She has the advantage of incumbency. She's got DeSantis's endorsement. And there's been a revolution that we forget in Florida since the days of the hanging chaff in 2000. The Republicans have taken over the state, and they have about 1.5 million more registered Republicans. If you total up in these races, all the Democrats that voted and all the Republicans have like 400,000 more votes than the Democrats. So they're going to turn out the vote. And they voted in much higher ratios than they had before. That was kind of a surprise to everybody. They thought, they're all the Republicans are mad at Trump. It's a midterm, but they got out and voted, so she'll win. And Byron Donalds, the governor, can the now the Republican nominee. I think he'll win too
Yeah, both
easily.
of them.
So they're not. I mean, Florida's a red state now.
What do you make of the Jon Ossoff in Georgia, who just recently said the sailors out there, our military out there are fighting Trump's war, number one. So he's accusing them, sort of harkens back to Vietnam and blaming soldiers. But the other thing he said was that he's getting a lot of flack for is that Trump, all he wants to do is build his ballroom and go on flights with Natalie Harp,
Yeah, that was
his
stupid.
assistant, which was crazy, but it's getting a lot of press out there
Well,
that
it's getting a lot of press because nobody knows who he is. So he was getting worried he had no name recognition. Georgia is a purple state now because Atlanta has got a lot of yuppies there. It's got a huge black population. So it's a 50-50 state now. And you can see it's highly weaponized. We saw that with Fulton County and Fannie Willis's lawfare that was waged against Donald Trump. So he wants to be known. But he's kind of like Mayor Fry. Remember him of Minneapolis? He was kind of doing a little dance the other day with a rap. It was just embarrassing. He was a nerd. And so Ossoff is the same. He's a privileged guy. He knows he would never have won that race had it not been for January 6th. Excuse me, the day before January 6th, but it had not been for that climate, because after Donald Trump won, um, after his first term, he thought he was headed for an easy reelection. He would have been if it hadn't been for COVID. But as we know, the state legislatures in about 25 states changed the rules under the guise of COVID. This was in March, April, May of 2020. So same-day voting, no ID, same-day registration and voting. You can register on the day of the election. And you can cure a ballot, you can harvest ballots. And the Republicans just weren't ready for that. So 30% of the people who had done mail-in or non-voting day balloting turned into 70%. And Trump was irate. And so that's sweet. He went crazy. That got a lot of anger. So then we had those two special elections in Georgia. And Donald Trump did not go down there and support the two Republicans. It was a strange, long explanation, but there were two candidates running for two Senate seats at the same time. And the problem was with the Republicans. Remember, Lynn Wood, the attorney, had said he was actually a Democrat, but he was agitating that the election had been stolen and the computers were fraudulent. And anyway, to make a long story short, the voters of Georgia were told that their vote wouldn't count. It would be stolen, like the January 6th protesters had alleged later. And the result is that when you look at the number of Republicans who turned out in November to vote for Trump, and he barely lost that state, I think, by 10,000 votes. He shouldn't have lost it. And the number who turned out for the Senate races, it was about a 600,000 drop. And even then, Ossoff didn't win by that much. So he was very careful about what he said because he understood he was the result of a fluke. But now, with this democratic socialist stuff in the air, it's gone to his head. He's trying to get out there and talk a little bit more abrasively. But as soon as he did, as you said, he made a fool of himself. Natalie Harp, she's known to almost every conservative columnist and writer because her job is to disseminate. She has a Rolodex, I don't know how many hundred or thousand on her email, and she'll send, like the Democrats do, tidbits, and she does it very professionally. And she is a, devout Christian, and she's a cancer survivor. She happens to be attractive and blonde. So he was trying to insinuate, because she was young and blonde and attractive, that Donald Trump is having some relationship that's extraordinary or taboo, or have some, I don't know what it would be, tryst with her. But she's not the type that fits that. So that was just character assassination. Then he just cemented the idea that the Democrats either are ambiguous about who wins the war, or when they say Trump war and they hate Trump, they want him to lose it. Is that what they do when we have thousands of Americans out there fighting? That was stupid. And,
And Trump called him Pee Wee Herman, and he does kinda look like Pee Wee
well, I
Herman.
mean, the problem with Trump's epithets are not that he says them and they're crude, but they fit and people laugh. And so, you know, I like Marco Rubio. When he said little Marco, I didn't have any idea how tall he was. Then I started noticing it. And when he said that about various people, y- you don't, after the initial shock that the president of the United States or a presidential candidate is engaging in that personal vitriol, passes, then it fits and it sticks. So, Jeb Bush, he did that to Jeb Bush too.
Yeah. What do you think, Ossoff's chances are given all of that? Do you think he'll be reelected?
No,
He
I
is
I
yeah,
don't. I
you
think
don't? He's gonna lose?
it's gonna be a very close race, and he's gonna lose
Yeah. Alright.
because, Trump and the Republican PACs, not individual Senate races, they will make up what lead he has. And, I just don't think you're gonna get a lot of black voters that are enthused by him and the Democratic side to come out.
Yeah.
When he won the first time, the other candidate was African American, remember, and, he was a preacher, and he had a lot of residents in the black community, and they all came out because there were 2 elections, but I don't see that happening,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I
I think, he's gonna lose.
yeah. And then finally, the Alaska ranking system is being put to the test by 2 candidates with exactly the same names, first and
That was
last. I believe
deliberate,
it's
yeah.
Sullivan. Yeah, they did that on
The
purpose, huh?
Democrats,
The
there's
Democrats did it, right?
16 candidates, you put 1 in with the same name, and then people get confused, and they split the vote. I'm very confident about the Senate. I think Said is gonna lose. I think Tellerico is gonna lose. I think Susan Collins is gonna win. Jackson's gonna lose. I think they're going to keep Lindsey Graham's seat. I think they're going to knock off Ossoff. So I'm, cautiously optimistic they'll
Optimistic.
hold the Senate, and they have a 40 to 50% chance of holding the House. These socialist candidates are stupid, and the Democrats are not reacting well to them. And, well, I shouldn't say they're not reacting. They don't have a choice. If they attack them, they'll stay home in the general election. If they cater them, then they're going to be hit by their Republican colleagues for endorsing these crazy positions. But you take Debbie, just take 2 races, El Said, who won, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She'll probably win, but I have a sneaking suspicion a lot of black voters on the Democratic side will stay home and not vote for her. I have a sneaking suspicion there's going to be a lot of independents, but especially Democrats, that will not vote for El Said. I have a sneaking suspicion there's some in Maine that will not vote for Jackson. I have a sneaking suspicion that Tallarico, for all of that high visibility, a lot of black voters in Texas, remember, they wanted Jasmine Crockett, and they won't come out. So, the Democratic Party either comes out with endorsements of these people, and then they lose moderates that don't want them, or they stay silent, and if they do win, a lot of Democrats will not come out. If they lose, then they get bitter and don't think the Democratic Socialists won't stay home if they have lost a primary race, which they have in some cases, and I don't think they're going to be very eager to get out and vote.
Just to add to your sneaking suspicions, and we have a sneaking suspicion that the polls are gonna be all wrong in favor
You
of the
know, 10
Democrats the
points,
whole time, yeah.
yeah, for El Said was wrong, 20 for Hong was wrong, 10 some of them were made up, admittedly so.
Yeah.